Northwood River project. And my feeling is that, yes, we're an advisory committee working on this, but there are people from all over the town who are interested in what's going on. And if we can provide the information in one central spot for them, it's going to be very helpful in the long run.
So I think it's a great idea. I'm just going to defer to Audra because there's a list of documents here and I don't know how you want to manage the
Right.
immediate publicity of it, because some of them, while we're negotiating a grant or whatever,
Right.
let's make sure that
Right.
we communicate documents that are
Right.
appropriate for public consumption,
Right.
because some of it is town business, and while it's in the process,
Right.
there's no point in
But
it.
it should be all.
So if I can defer to you and
Yeah, I mean, I'd say absolutely, and I guess like, what of this do you think that we haven't posted so far?
Well, I don't see anything on there on the website about the actual grant from Natural Fish and Wildlife. It was the pre-proposal of what we presented, but nothing about the grant itself.
Well, the full
dollar-
narrative is on there.
Is that the actual grant, and does it have deadlines
The
in it?
full narrative is there, and we don't have anything. I think I've been asked by the same person for the grant agreement
Mhm.
a lot, and
Yeah.
like I said to that person and everybody, as soon as I get it, I'll post it, but
Okay.
we haven't
Alright.
received it yet.
Okay,
right,
all right.
it's the
Okay.
type of thing that takes much more. I know the expectation is that, oh, we
Right.
were awarded a grant, but the period between the announcement of the award and the grant agreement being
Right.
signed, it
Yeah.
takes weeks, and it's
Okay.
not, it's
Okay,
Awesome.
Fine.
it's regular
Fine.
business, so,
Right. And even a little note in there for
No,
the
exactly.
interim was just saying that
right,
the full text of the grant agreement is not available yet.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could post the old grant agreement because I think. We have an interfluve grant, I'm sorry, NIFWIF grant where we did something similar. And I think that the new one is gonna be almost exactly the same, except a different
Right.
project number.
right.
Right.
So I mean, yeah, I can do all this stuff, but I guess it would be. Like, is this based off you looking at the website and seeing
Yeah.
things that are missing?
Some of the things, okay?
Okay, because I'm more, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is this, because since pretty much all of this is already on there,
Right.
are people struggling to find it? So does that mean that
Right.
maybe I need to look at reorganizing it so it's easier to find?
I think.
Is
it's
that
able
what-
to
is that
content- I mean, right now you can hit on,
Mhm.
I think interfluve report. I think there were 2 interfluve reports and I could only find one. No.
Right, and they're all on there,
But
Yeah.
it's hard.
It's hard
but
to
it's
find.
more of like,
Yeah.
do I need to reorganize it so it's
Table
easier?
of contents right at the top, and then
Yeah.
you can go into them. I think would be just very helpful to people. And a note that this is not available yet. It will
Mm-hmm.
be posted as soon as available, whatever would be great.
Sure, yeah, no, I can do all of that.
Right.
The other caveat, and I think we need to put is the all grant related expenditure updated monthly.
Well,
I think a quarterly update is
Okay.
more
Good.
reasonable in terms of expectations,
Right.
because it's a huge accounting
that's fine.
overall.
That's fine.
So
Yeah.
I think,
That's fine.
but again, Audra,
Please.
you're the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about all of that a little
Yeah.
bit, because it's kind of like, what is that information gonna tell anyone
Yeah.
in the format that we would be able to present it in, and making sure that it's just useful, I
I
guess.
think one of the things that, throughout this whole process is we're gonna be getting questions, if
Mhm.
not already, of, well, how much is the town spending on this project?
Right.
Yeah,
And I think all of us feel that the town has to be as upfront as possible with everybody. Public information that's available, if it's available on a quarterly basis or whatever, that's fine, but I think we need to communicate with everybody who's gonna be, every town member is going to be affected by this in one way or another.
That's the point of it.
Yeah, okay, so I just
You,
want
yeah, no, I think so. I think because the list of documents,
Mhm.
I think in principle, everybody agrees.
to.
I'm not sure, do you want a motion on? Because Audra has to go back and do a little bit of work, so maybe we can table a vote until, or whatever, whatever.
Or if in general principle, everybody in the committee feels in favor of it.
I think we,
In point of clarification, Rick, Are you proposing that these be, that in order to find them, people come to our website or under the broader banner that the town has, which is the River Project?
I think the river project is where people are going to
Yeah.
go.
I'm
And
just a
if-
little concerned about them confusing us with all the grants if it's posted under our header. I just wanted to clarify what you wanted.
Well, I think what you have on there right now is the Gunnacook River Project Updates, I think is the title for it. And in there, you can hit a button about our committee, and you can hit a button, or whatever you want to call it, for the interview report. You can hit a button for that. People are going to be interested in what's going on in our committee. They're there, but you know, we're not going to have all the information on our site.
No.
Then why make them go to 3 or 4 different sites if it's all in one place?
Brittany,
I think we could decide between, first of all, I think it's really important that we do have a website presence. We could decide between having the website presence be related to the select board as it is right now, and just being very separate, and all the information that we're gathering and providing to the public, where we want to put that, right? So there's probably gonna be some overlap, but do we want a separate website? Because you don't want, I think we don't want our image to be that we are part of the select board. We're separate, right? We're a separate entity. So I'm just worried that if we
It's a
put all of
town
our
committee.
information on the town website, it'll come across as a little too close, but
but it is a town committee.
this is.
Yeah,
Right.
and I just want to clarify, and further out on the agenda, we're going to talk about some of the outreach.
Yeah.
Visions that we have, and the website is on there, and I think, I won't go into it now, but we have some ideas how that might work and fit to exactly what you're
Right.
saying, so it's not confusing, so we'll share those.
Yeah, I think also on that is the idea of a forum, which is kind of missing, but I think that's part of what is really wanted. And there's, you know, a place to just put a question, start a conversation, get a bunch of input, maybe in real time, kind of a forum. And I don't want to make a request of that, because I don't know if that's necessarily important, but I think, do we want to get down to, you know, kind of sharing all presentations that say committee members attend and are out there?
Or not, I mean,
I mean, like the one that you went to, for example.
Yeah, and that way at least it starts a conversation that is, you know, is more open and, you know, has a chance of being a little more civil and impactful. So I think that would be good. And I guess I would have to just sort of back into saying that, you know, part of, I think, some people's takeaway from my synopsis from the Unlimited meeting was handled kind of unfortunately from my perspective. And I guess I just want to stick up for anybody should share any input that they get from any source. If they're anonymous or not, that's okay. It's okay to share that. We're not in a position of influence. We're just volunteers. So we come here in earnest, we bring our best, and so that really shouldn't ever be questioned. And so I guess stick up for each other if you feel like you're copied on an email where your committee member's integrity is getting you know, questioned, you might say something. So I'll leave it at that, but I think a forum could be a lively possibility. Not sure how to pull that off, but
I think the issue is always the expectation, so there's a limited number of committee members and a limited number of other people who can answer the question. So when we create a forum, the expectation is that we're going to be answering. And so if we don't do that, then it's worse than not having a forum, I think. So, but I think the discussion around communication and ideas on how to communicate is coming later today. And there's what I'm super excited about is that there's a lot of good ideas from all of you on how to communicate. and energy about doing it, so that's, I think we're gonna find good ways to do it. Anyone else on the open mic? Tyler?
Switching gears a little bit, but when we did our gap analysis, we had some big items in there that we were trying to address. I've been going back through the intergroup reports and have like small items in there that like I have questions on, and I feel like I don't know how to get those answered or what our process is going to be to capture those. And it was specifically to their flood analysis. It seemed like they were treating the dams as passive elements where you weren't actively drawing down dams 3 feet before major water events or other things. And it seemed like the thing that I found difficult was they were showing these potential 50-year, 10-year storms where you're having major flooding events and being adjacent to the river for some of these, they haven't flooded, and they haven't flooded because proactively, we've actually, it's interesting because the Montgomery River is like, I think it's at 8% of the whole watershed. So you have this like huge reservoir.
Right.
And so when you draw that down so it's interesting the report kind of treated, it seems like the boundary conditions that were they either put on themselves or didn't answer some of the questions I had about what that looks like. So I don't know where we capture those and how we make sure that those questions get answered, and we're gonna encounter that probably with a lot of these.
Yeah.
Whether they're older reports or new reports where we look at it, and once you start learning more, unfortunately you have more questions.
I agree with you, and especially with flooding. I have a lot of questions too that I would love to have answered. So maybe that could be one of the expert topics we can, kind of put in a parking lot. Because I think this is a huge question, actually. It's not just a technical question, it's almost the crux of the issue, at least for the Montgomery Dam. No, I think it's, and if we can source those questions, I'm gonna assume that pretty much everybody in Camden needs to better understand that. I don't think we have a solid grasp of the flooding and does it flood, does it not, what are the consequences? I mean, I think there's a lot of beliefs and historical. I remember when I was 10 years old, I saw XYZ, but
Right.
but what is the science? What are the consequences? How do we manage this? I think it's a huge,
Sure.
I'm putting that on the plate.
Yeah, and a lot of questions that aren't easily answered either. So I mean, they're gonna take some time to answer. It makes a good point. Are you all set?
No, that's fine.
I just gonna piggyback on
But-
Tyler's comment.
But one sec, because he's asking also for a process so that all of us, and then reading reports, whatever, having a question that could be, let's frame the question maybe that could be lead to a presentation or something, because it's exactly, I mean, what I'm expecting from you is exactly that, like, I don't understand this, I want to know how it works. And I think we need to have like a Google spreadsheet or somewhere where, bam, we can put it and everybody sees it. And then we can have an action plan, say, we know an expert who can explain that to us and have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm stealing your thunder.
No, that's exactly, yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I like to get into the process issues, and we won't go too far right this minute, but all of you saw the email from Roger Ackley with the 12 questions, and to me, that was a great prompt for our committee, and exactly what Tyler and others are talking about tonight is we need a mechanism to be able to answer these questions and answer them thoughtfully. So, on the agenda, it's towards the end, so it's a ways down there, but subcommittees it seems like we're at the point where we need 2 or 3 focused people to be able to really dig into these and not necessarily give all the answers, but to have a process together so we can do this, because this is just the beginning. There's a lot of questions, and this is a big function of the committee. So I just want to make sure we can devote some time to that tonight.
Cool.
Okay.
So are we done with the open mic or anybody else?
I think we need to be.
Okay, I'm just looking at you because I know the Rick's eye like.
If that's what they'll serve, then yes.
Yes.
Next agenda item.
Next agenda item is Audra, you're up. Is that a good time?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Sophie and Forrest asked me to give a couple of updates on some projects that we have going with a couple of the bridges that cross the McGonagall. The first one being the Rawson Avenue Bridge. So what I'm gonna do for each of them is just give you a little bit of history, because I know not everybody, you know, some of you, this will be redundant if you've been kind of paying attention to how this is unfolded. And, you know, for some of you, it'll be new information, or parts of it are new and parts of it are old. So with the Rawson Avenue Bridge, in 2017, the town engaged Gartley and Dorsey to do an engineering feasibility study. And this was really prompted by a recent inspection that MDOT did on the bridge, where they, sure. Thanks, Maggie.
This is a talking stage.
Yeah, exactly. They rated several critical components of the bridge to be in poor or severe condition. And the Rawson Avenue Bridge is a little bit of a funny legacy, where it's not on a state aid road anymore, but it's still a bridge that's owned by MDOT. And they were pretty upfront with the town when the rating for the condition of it got to be pretty severe, that they had no interest in paying the full price of replacing that bridge, because it wasn't on a state aid road anymore. Even though they owned it, they saw it as a redundant bridge because there's a way to get around it, because of the way that Ames Terrace sort of winds around and where Rawson Avenue is. So there wasn't interest by DOT in spending the full amount of money to replace it. However, they did realize that for a lot of reasons, the town might have wanted to keep that access open. So instead of dead ending Rawson Avenue at each end, they gave us the option of working with them on a local area partnership project, where the town would be responsible for half the cost of the project. And so after talking about this over several years, you know, we were all aware that it was in poor condition. It had been posted for a maximum of 5 tons. So at that time, fuel trucks, school buses, you know, a lot of different types of vehicles were not supposed to go over the bridge at all. And when the water level, they put those markers on the red and the yellow, when the water levels got to a certain height on that bridge, we were not supposed to use it altogether. And around 2019, it was spring of 2019, they closed it completely because they were just so concerned with how much it had deteriorated that they didn't want anyone using it all. And so there were like several conversations between 2017 and 2019 over what was going to be done with that bridge. And what was settled on was replacing it with a pedestrian bridge, because much less cost than a multimodal bridge. And the people, particularly in that neighborhood, were more concerned with having a safe route to school, because it's a good cut through for a lot of children who live on that side of town and are trying to get to the middle school. So that was the direction that we went in, was a pedestrian bridge, and entering into that local area partnership with MDOT to do that project. So over 2 financial years, FY22 and FY23, the town started putting money away for our contribution to that project. So we're seeing it as, even though I'm hoping it's going to be much less than this, we're budgeting for like a $500,000 bridge. Hopefully by the time we start, we have to contemplate doing the project, it'll be less than that, but it's a good cushion. We've got funding set aside, and so does MDOT. So we signed the agreement with MDOT to do this project in, what was the date that I had? It was in 2022 when we signed the official agreement, so the beginning of this year. And part of that is going through their process, where we have to, do an RFP for an engineering consultant, and eventually the construction side of the project. And so we engaged HEB Engineering out of Bridgeton in September, and they're going to, step through the design process with us. So since we engaged HEB, we've had 1 meeting with the project team from MDOT to review the preliminary design for just the removal of the bridge, because the way that it's working with our agreement with MDOT, they're going to be responsible for all of the demolition of the existing bridge, and also preparing the abutments on either side of the river So that the new bridge can just be kind of placed on the new abutments. And there's been some discussion about, just the way that the abutments on one side of the bridge interact with the retaining wall that's part of the tannery property. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that site, but there's that wooden retaining wall.
Mhm.
And the last conversation we had with MDOT, they're kind of like, it's a little bit like a zipper, where if you start to take away one portion of that, you're gonna have to address the whole thing. So we know that we're gonna need to look at that a little bit more closely. So they're gonna go and survey that area, which is also the riverbank, to try to understand how it works a little bit more, so that when they're doing their design work for the removal of the current abutments, they can take into account how that's going to affect that retaining wall.
That retaining wall, that retaining wall holds back the rewrap whole area, right?
Well,
The original first one,
yeah, I guess the extent of like what function it has in that, I don't believe it's.
Right.
From what I've heard, it's not like we need to worry about like getting into contaminated
Yeah, okay.
elements,
Right.
but still like figuring out how it's gonna function once it's changed and what state MDOT plans to leave it in is gonna be pretty important, and something that we'll update you all on, because there are things like making sure it's designed with stream smart principles in mind, and best practice in how you handle a riverbank or restore a riverbank when you have the opportunity to in an area like this.
Mhm.
And that's all, the kind of things that HEB's fantastic with and very aware of. And so that's kind of the status of that particular project, is that the MDOT needs to do a little bit more work to understand that particular area a little bit more.
So super simple project.
And I guess what makes it difficult is, and this is what probably a theme that we'll come back to with the Main Street Bridge is all of these bridges sort of pinch the river. There's much more understanding now of like when you're designing a bridge, like how you treat the river so that there's little conflict as possible between the infrastructure and then, sort of the natural system that it's interacting with. And, none of these were designed where it was like, 1.5 times bank full width or those sorts of principles that everybody tries to adhere to today, particularly when they're putting in a new bridge. So that's the kind of challenge we have with that site.
yeah, if I remember, there was discussions about that bridge being probably the worst design for water flow around it, past it,
Yeah,
really.
definitely, because that
Right.
big, huge pier in the center.
Quick question, designing the footbridge,
Mhm.
okay, is there going to be a place where people can cast a line into the river from the bridge?
It really, I mean, like, this project got us looking at the whole, yeah, I don't see why not.
Yeah.
It's going to be longer than the existing bridge because the span's got to be further.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
I don't see why that wouldn't be, something that we would want to look at. There's
Mhm.
also, a lot of land, both in the sort of right of way and also on the tannery property
Right.
that, could accommodate that. And we definitely want to look at it a little more holistically than just like
Yeah.
bridge here, tannery there.
Yeah.
So I think that, we do have that opportunity. And I think that's one of the reasons why Forrest and Sophie wanted me to talk to you all about this project, because there are some opportunities for this to be a part of this broader discussion about what we do with the river.
Because there is a platform and next to the river walk in one spot along the river,
Yeah.
there, but it's not quite as convenient as it would be on a footbridge.
Right, yeah.
I'm gonna ask you to move on to the next update.
Sure.
Route one, I mean,
Yeah, so this is a much more complicated project for obvious reasons. So MDOT, I guess,
first, does everybody know which project we're talking about on Route one? So
it's the bridge that's right on Main Street. And it actually, a lot of those sort of Main Street businesses are right on the bridge. Some of them actually tie into the bridge. So like, the old tarot card shop, the Smiling Cow, the Stadium Gallery, House of Logan on the opposite side of the bridge. Those are all businesses that are like right on the bridge. So with that particular bridge, it's in much better condition than the Rawson Avenue Bridge. So we don't have the same, time pressures, and there isn't the same level of urgency with that one that there is with Rawson Avenue. And MDOT really wants to work with the town to make sure whatever they're doing. Whatever they're
Who's ready to move on?
Format and schedule.
Yeah, right.
French movie just stops talking. So, yeah, with that bridge, there's a little more time to make sure that we're coordinating our efforts with them, which I think is really, really positive. That MDOT is at that stage, and we're at a certain stage where we can do that. So I guess just to give you an idea of what it looks like from MDOT's perspective, where they're sitting right now, what they're leaning towards is just replacing the superstructure of the bridge with a single span and not doing anything with the abutments on either side of it. So that, the superstructure is like the deck of the bridge, the cars actually drive over. And if any of you have gone under there and looked at it, there's this huge pier in the center. So it doesn't span the entire length of the river. It's got that center pier that the river flows around. So they're considering getting rid of that, replacing the superstructure, and then they do something, some new technology or polymer that they would inject into the abutments on either side that would make them a little bit thicker than they are now and wider. So that's kind of what they're preliminarily thinking about. They didn't study a full replacement option, or they did study a full replacement option, but it wasn't one that was Stream Smart compliant. So that whole, 1.5 times bank full width design, they didn't look at doing that. And a lot of that was driven by the fact that the abutments were in pretty good shape. And the, cost to sort of replace those with a completely new bridge just wasn't very feasible, given their long range planning and the state of it currently. There are a few properties that are directly, their supports are directly attached to the bridge. And that's problematic because they're going to have to be detached when they're doing this project. And that, there's some buildings that probably won't be an issue for, but there are others that are in a condition where that could be very problematic for them. So they've got a lot of work to do with those property owners to try and figure out what's the path forward for them. And, also the sort of stability of some of those buildings during construction from the vibrations and the disruption in general. That's another concern that they're trying to get a better idea of, what the implications might be. Yeah, any other?
Audra, what's your timeline? What's their timeline, I think?
Well, that's the thing, like, it was scheduled to be like a 2025 project, but because they want to work with us to make sure that their plans align with ours, because what happens with the river at that point has pretty significant impact on what they may or may not decide to do there. So they want to make sure that they're coordinating efforts with us. So they
Or
are
be later.
absolutely happy to extend their timeframes. And the last thing that we know is that they've completed a preliminary hydraulic analysis. So that's the work they've done to date. We're going to try to meet with them regularly to touch base on this and give updates and keep them updated as well.
So, Audra, the coordination of the town with DOT on this, how does that, their project intersect with the river project?
Well, they're very aware of it, and because they know that we're doing all this work, particularly on that segment of the river, they just want to make sure that we're keeping each other updated, and they are not interested in sort of moving ahead until we've made like a decision on what we're going to do.
Okay, so it's not urgent, as you said, in other words, the bridge is gonna be fine.
Yes, yeah, we don't have to worry about imminent failure at that one, unlike Bronson Avenue.
What, whatever, on the phone structure and everything like that, is that going to open up the water channel more than it is now, or is it still going to siphon in like it does?
Well, it would open it up more not having that center issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can keep moving on the agenda if you want.
Thank you, Roger.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Coming back from war there.
I say all those committees all the time. Exactly, well, he's, you know, he's like a few months old. All right, so we're done with Audra's updates.
Well, we didn't get to the grant part, but I think we need to move on because of time.
So when she comes back, we can talk about it, but I think we also touched upon it when we addressed your petition. It's in the process of being signed, but I don't think we have the grant agreement signed yet.
Yeah, we asked Audra just today and it's, NIFWIF came back with some things that needed to be changed and Audra is in the process of working with that. So, you know, there is no signed contract or grant agreement. So, you know, kind of the news is no news. So it's a little bit in limbo right now,
It's in process.
but moving.
It's in process, not limbo. Let's just.
Okay,
That's
right.
not- Okay, format and
Ask that maybe once that's all settled, just to announce it to us maybe, and so we can go
Definitely.
over it outside of the committee.
format and scheduling. You want, is it you or Maggie?
I think me,
Mid-month.
yeah,
You-
I
go for it.
think, so the next topic was something, which, you know, my thought was, and I'm guessing a lot of the committee agrees, is we had a lot of time between our last meeting and this meeting, and we had, you know, lots of momentum, lots of energy, and then kind of a lull. And, you know, I guess I've always thought all along that maybe monthly is not enough. So the idea proposed, and it sounds like there's been some positive feedback, you know, I emailed this to you a week ago, is to have a mid-monthly online, almost like a webinar or a presentation, an educational presentation with the topics to be raised by the committee. And that we do that via Zoom. And it sounds like logistically Audra can set it up and it's all very easy to do, and the public can be listening as well. So it's not just for the committee, but obviously for the general public. So I think mostly we wanted to talk about what is the format and then try to schedule the first couple. And my suggestion for the first one, we have the FB Environmental Water Quality Data Report that will be ready to go. We were just waiting for some dam release data because that obviously impacts the oxygen levels in the river. So I don't know if that's come in yet, but I think regardless, you know, the first meeting, that would be a good kind of dry run to have, you know, us give that presentation. And then beyond that, it's more up to the committee. We talked about fisheries biologists, we talked about a historian, we talked about flooding. I mean, there are lots of, I feel like we can keep this busy for a year or two easily.
Yeah.
Keep this busy.
Yes, Stella.
The timing for the survey, the resident survey. I was just wondering, because I don't think the things you listed were listed necessarily in chronological order. And it occurred to me that the sooner, and maybe we do more than one, the sooner we got something out to people, that would feed our list of educational topics. In other words, they could come from the people as well as from our own looking at reports.
Yeah, I think, are you jumping ahead to the,
Public opinion survey.
Yeah, sorry.
yeah,
No, it's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have that listed kind of as like the onset of the project, and that's a great idea, and it's like listed here January through March, so it is kind of like the first bin. I think by the time we get the NIFA, you know, by the time we get that settled, like January is probably reasonable. But yeah, I think.
I think nothing between now and January is reasonable.
Usually how does.
Right.
So, but I think we would also need to engage like newspapers and different media to advertise the survey and how people can take it. Because we come back to the same issue. The town does not have a database of emails of taxpayers.
Right.
So how do we make sure that people know how to participate? What are the channels? Because that's our, right now it's our biggest hurdle. Is to make sure that we reach the maximum number of people in Camden.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like there are some ways to get that, to really maximize that. But I did want to flip back just to the.
Yeah.
To the agenda item, just, and then we can come back to and Maggie and I will explain this a little better, because we just got it today, so. We'd be happy to do that, but. You know, do we want to go ahead and schedule a couple meetings? I mean, I guess I wanted, you know, unless people have an issue or comments with this mid-month meeting or objections.
I would just propose that we do the first and the third Tuesdays of every month.
No. No,
No,
no, because that's select board usually.
but we're
So it's
first
usually,
and third, but I mean, we're doing that right now with these meetings.
Yeah, there we-
Are
At the
we?
same time.
Yeah,
4:30 to 6.
I guess I didn't mention that, but I would suggest we go with the same time frame, especially if they're, you know, professionals, they're still kind of on their work day.
so I agree with the time frame.
Yeah.
But I think I just don't want to have them scheduled on the same day as the select board meeting, because I won't see them. But we would do them from 4:30 PM to 6 PM. Okay, so that's fine.
Okay. 4:30 to 6, first and third Tuesdays. Obviously, January will be a little bit different.
Right.
Maybe the second and the third, but.
Cool.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I think we could probably, I guess, forego the next one because of the holidays, the December. I mean, it's more up to you than us.
Yeah, first
Oh,
of
yeah.
January.
I didn't even look at the calendar.
Sophie just
What's the
laid down the law, nothing between.
Yeah, first speaker in January.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
So January 17th.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yes,
It is.
Yeah.
yes.
It's the day after MLK Day.
I think that feels.
Yeah, does that sound good?
That sounds good.
So as far as our commitment to this committee, would there be an expectation that we would be at those meetings as well as the?
Yeah, really good question. I think the idea is that it would be set up that, you know, the committee is basically the panel. So the presentation is going to the committee, and then there'd be an opportunity for the public to send in questions as well, but sort of, you know,
And the
that's,
committee as well.
And to be on like the
Yeah.
Zoom webinar
Right.
platform, you know, so that public comments would go through Q&A, and any committee members would be elevated to a panelist, like Forrest was saying.
so it would be a committee function.
Right.
Another piece we talked about I think, during our agenda setting meeting was, the public will be able to listen in. We were wondering if we could involve them by, opening the chat up and letting them ask questions. And then there could be a moderator, they could go through the questions and see, okay, what questions are being asked, maybe there are many that are the same, and then moderator could ask facilitator of the presentation these questions. I thought that was a really good idea.
Yeah, there's a Q&A.
Yeah, Q&A,
Yeah, just to clarify with the Q&A.
Yeah,
not the
that's
chat.
Kind of the chat.
exactly.
All right.
Yeah,
I sent you an example of what we did at Mary Spring Nature Center with our Tuesday talk program, where it worked very well. You have a presenter, you have a moderator, and then anybody during the whole presentation, or you can type in a question and you go into the box and then the moderator can eliminate ones that are duplicating everything, but that way we'll get a good feel, or should get a good feel of some of the questions and interests of the people who are tuning in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool. I
one
can't
of
wait for these.
one of the things we learned in the pandemic is that online presentations can actually work pretty well.
Right.
Yeah.
Quite well, so
Right.
sometimes better than in person. So.
Right.
Okay,
Can I make one little technical suggestion though? Okay, we have a bylaw that says that if you miss 3 meetings, you're off the committee. And I don't know if it should apply also to these Zoom meetings.
That's what I'm worried.
Okay, all right,
What, up to you.
okay.
Yeah, I
Just for the regular meeting.
Yes.
Regular meetings, yes, you should be here, need to be here with, you know, unless they're unexcused absences, but I just put it that way.
Is that acceptable to everyone?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, as long as they don't have good reasons, right?
Yeah.
Great.
How good it is.
You're totally.
Technically, you're not gonna know if somebody's really tuned in or not.
Right.
Well, you would if we,
If
if
you
we
had
decided to
pictures.
elevate the committee to
Right.
panelists, then you would see them.
Yeah, okay.
But maybe it could also be like subcommittees or just 2 or 3
Yeah.
panelists, you
It
know.
could be
something.
representative.
It doesn't need to
Just
be
a
everyone
little-
all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think, Ray? Ray, you still there?
Form a subcommittee for that, for the presentation group, is there gonna be a subcommittee that's gonna work on that, or are you in charge of finding people, and, I mean, I feel like we need a committee to figure out what's our priority in terms of it.
Yeah, I think that was the intention. That's what we talked about at our agenda setting meeting. I think we have the first one set up, so that one's gonna be easy, but I think the subcommittee or the education committee would possibly be the group that brings that through, and that's coming up on the agenda too.
And if the group decides to do a subcommittee and like had a topic but didn't know someone, we could certainly, I mean, we'll be right there to help with like
Okay.
connecting to
Yeah.
technical experts.
Should we go right into this?
So what's the first one is January 17, and it's gonna be the
River quality.
The one-
water river baseline.
The monitoring data that we collected this year.
Make it not boring.
At 4:30.
The topic would be like uber boring. No, seriously, I
Yeah,
mean,
believe me, we've done this so
I know.
long. You know it would be boring.
well, I mean, we need to build it with something. I mean, I'm super interested by water quality and the data you gather and everything. But I can see how, oh, great, the first meeting is about data and water quality, yeah. And so we need to make it engaging.
Well, and
I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
But maybe the title needs to be, you know, what's all data, something that's a bit, you know, less.
well, and if the committee is interested, we can do a bit of a kind of a river water quality, 101 as part of that, an interesting version, and then go into the data, which can be
Mhm.
a little dense.
Can
Um,
can you include in that the comment that Susan and I had raised at our table about the moss tent?
Report.
The report that was done. I don't know whether Maryland would still have anything about that, or who would have it, maybe the state would.
Which report? I'm sorry.
Lost 10.
Moss Tent did a water quality test, hired people to do it because they wanted, she was thinking of putting an installation near the river.
Mhm.
And so the
Yeah.
results we were told were that the highest, what was it, Susan, the highest amount of
Right.
pollution
Yes.
within a certain area of the river.
Right.
So if that data is there, it's worth incorporating.
Especially since it might have changed or might have stayed. the
Might have
same.
changed.
Exactly.
Yeah, be interesting to see if it has.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know Esperanza Stanchoff is still looking for full data too.
Okay,
There are some reports that were done, because there was a lot of data that was collected from like 90 through like early 2000s.
Cool.
And to jazz it up, we can get some visuals or some of the bugs you found, right?
yeah, we didn't look for bugs at this point, yeah.
So I think the question that's interesting is why is water quality a key part of what we're trying to do with the river, right? And I think it's in the mission statement that we're steward of this asset. And so we need to make sure that the water quality is
Mhm.
up to standards. And, you know, I'm sure it's gonna be great. I just,
I think it'll be fine, just scientific. I don't. think-
Animated.
We'll have something in there for everybody. We'll do our best,
tweezers.
yeah.
And how long are these gonna be? Did we discuss that?
I would suggest no more than an hour.
For the
I think-
questions too?
Yeah, I think we need to have like not death by PowerPoint or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a 20-minute, maximum presentation, which is the standard we set at the select board, by the way, we ask people not more than 20 minutes, I think. And a lot of room for Q&A and more like geared for discussions, I think, as much as we can with a,
We'll
digital,
probably figure out as we go too.
Exactly.
See how
Yeah.
it works.
But does that sound good to everybody? 20 minutes and an hour max, counting public discussion and Q&A?
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we go right back into this, and I guess, Madam Chair, with time in mind, it's 5:30, we definitely need some time for subcommittee, so I'm gonna go fairly quickly through this, knowing that, again, you just saw it today, knowing that this is a draft, right? This is not set in stone anywhere, this is a vision, and I think instead of getting way deep into the details, given the time, I'm gonna sort of lay out the framework. So this isn't in order of importance or anything, it's just set into these three: setting the stage, getting the word out, and active engagement. The timeline on the right really gets into more of some of the suggestions we have of where to dive in. And as you can see, January to March of 2023 is sort of, there's a lot in there. And what's interesting with the engagement plan is, the thinking is that Camden is ready to have a lot of public engagement as soon as possible. And I haven't heard anyone say otherwise. So the way this plan is laid out, this is a lot of activity for 1 year for 2023, but that's intentional. So would the work carry on beyond then? Absolutely. But this is a pretty intense outreach and engagement plan. The idea is, and again, nothing is formalized or set in stone, is that the NIFWIF grant will help pay for this. So there is a outreach and education budget. Some of you may know that, some of you may not, to pay for a lot of these activities, which can be time consuming. And so it's not all on the committee, hopefully, once the grant gets running, that there'll be, financial assistance to do a lot of this work. But the idea is that the committee is driving, it's a main function of the committee that's driving a lot of this engagement. So again, we put this together, Maggie and I put this together as something to start with, to reflect on, to get your feedback on, and we'll have to adjust it as we go in some ways, but we basically took the experiences that we've had over the last, for Maggie, 10 years, for me, more like 30 years of doing public engagement activities, what has worked well, and leaving out what hasn't worked well. But there's kind of a lot of everything in here, and that doesn't mean we have to do everything that's in here. But again, these are suggestions that have worked in other communities and have worked for other projects. So I guess I'll go a little bit deeper into that, and then Maggie, please weigh in. So obviously the setting the stage, I'm going from the top, has already happened. Reviewing previous community engagement, success and challenges, that's started, but to be honest, from Maggie and my perspective, we know there's been a lot of engagement. We've seen the videos, we've read news articles, we haven't seen it all sort of summarized in one place. And so that's what we need to understand and then help convey to all of you, is what's been done and what hasn't been done. So
you're going to do that.
We're going to start that. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, it feels like
really
a gap, an education and outreach gap. And again, we've heard a lot, but we haven't seen it all in writing and a chronology, if you will.
But when I think that's important, given the number of times we've heard either face-to-face or through written material, that there hasn't been any engagement, that the public hasn't been able to participate. And there's a fair amount on the website, the town's website. And I started going through it, but that's a commitment of time to go through those long forums. But I was actually pleased to see how many there had been, without any idea of what the quality of them was. So I'm delighted to hear that you're going to do that.
And do you think on that timeline, it's worth it to have? There's definitely private interests within this project. Is it good to understand the public outreaches that those groups have had? And like, it's hard. I mean, there's a lot of competing voices out there, so it'd be good to know
Everything,
what
absolutely.
information people have received and who they've received it from, or who they perceive it from. Because I think, there's a select board timeline, I think there's a Montgomery watershed timeline, there's the Save the Dam timeline. That have all had points where they reached out to the public.
Yeah, really good point.
And I think we're also hoping, I don't know what extent you all have been engaged in the outreach efforts that have happened so far, but. We'd love to hear from you as representatives of the community, like what, as a participant, like what worked and what didn't work and what have you seen and heard, so.
Just email you.
Yeah.
Email.
They'll email the group.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll send some prompts out as well.
Along the same lines, it's a little different. I'm wondering if it would be helpful for someone in the group or a subcommittee to look at what's worked in other towns. On specific dam removal in Maine or more broadly, just to get extra information and insight. If anyone's interested.
Yeah, there is that, there's a bit of a film on the Sheepscot River.
Yeah.
The dam removal.
Yeah.
So that, if people were interested, that would be a good place to start to get more in-depth information about their process. They just referred to what a good community process it was. But there's no indication of what that actually looked like.
How they do it, what were the mistakes that were made, and
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Then I think also you have to look at the other side. I think it was in Bristol where there was a dam removal effort and the town decided to everybody that they wanted their dam there. And they made all kinds of adjustments to save it and to accomplish what the town.
Yeah, regardless of the outcome,
Right.
it would be good to know.
Right.
Different examples.
Yeah, so there are examples of many. And that's the one thing, I don't know, you gonna go down this list or?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so I'll keep going and so, getting the word out, you can, see what's in front. So project branding, I don't know what that means to people. And again, there's flexibility into how that's done, but the basic message here is that people, so the citizens of Camden know that this is the Megunticook River Citizens Advisory Committee, that the things we produce have a certain format. Maybe there's a logo, but there's a theme and there's, commonality so that when people come to the election table, they know that it's separate from the other groups.
Yes.
So I think that's really what branding is, to make it stand out and then give it something moving ahead. So, along with branding comes social media and all the other pieces that are so important. And again, remembering that a lot of people are only going to give this, 25 seconds of a day. So, I think that's a lot of the thinking here.
One thing I would remark about those things about project brand, you're gonna go through each one of these lines here?
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna have time to get through them all, but I think that's for now. Let's go on.
All right, what I was gonna say is on the project branding and the informational video and monthly newsletter and everything, I think we should make sure that it's a fair approach of both sides, showing, I'll say both sides, but those who are in favor of at least keeping some dams, those who want everything, all the dams out or whatever, but it's gotta be a fair showing, and that this committee, I don't think, has taken a position one way or the other. That's really not what we're going to do at this point in time, so it's gotta be there.
So I think leaning into the conflict is a good way to phrase it, because there are very strong opinions both ways.
Yes.
And the people in Camden need to understand those positions better than they have in the past.
Yeah.
And the purpose of the committee is not to come with a consensus or one opinion.
Right.
It's really to voice the questions that our fellow citizens who cannot attend this meeting have.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important that, every aspect be explored.
Mhm.
And every question be asked.
Right.
And, yes, we're gonna have some uncomfortable conversations, let's have them.
But can we have those conversations within a broader context? Because one of the things that I keep missing, maybe because of my background, is more information about what does it mean to have ecological diversity? What does it look like when you have a healthy river? What are the things that make that possible? What are the things that impede it? The dams are part of that question.
But it's not the whole question, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's when I saw the thing, the last part of that second item that Ray was talking about the dams, I thought you do have to lean into it, but you want people when they do that to think about it more broadly than whether I care about this particular dam or not.
I mean,
Sure.
for me, it's important that we look at every issue, that we don't leave any stone unturned, right? Because
There are a lot of stones.
that's how things get.
Could be on a brain. Many.
Great, so
Left under.
the next item, informational video. And now the thought here, and at our last meeting, we talked a little bit about how some of you were, including myself, were really driven by really high quality videos that you saw, where you had the visuals to go with the words and maybe the music. So the vision here is to, take some existing footage and create more footage, and maybe it's only 3 to 5 minutes long. And maybe it includes, a view down the river of a drone, to really, have something that's very high quality that you would all have obviously a lot of input in, and that's kind of fun, right? Helping produce a video, so.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that just ties in really well to what you were saying, Deb, because I think that video would kind of, I imagine would show that broader context and visually kind of, provide that for,
That's what I was hoping. Love it. I'd like to be in a drone.
Yeah, I think visuals is key. I think another thing that has been brought up is making a 3D model. So we can see what it looks like to not have the dams, what does the dam do, etc. And also just pictures of like the maps that we had at the election day. Those are great, but just more visuals would be great. We could bring them to our stakeholder meetings or put them in the front office.
Yeah, and absolutely, and the 3D model we'll have to add in there because that already is.
No, but it's not a committee project.
Right, but a committee could still have input into it.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it's in the grant.
So it's gonna be in
The
the
3D
grant.
models in the grant. Is that why it's not?
Right.
Considered?
yeah, it was probably an oversight on our part, but it was like listed as a different line in the grant. But it is tagged in the grant to be done.
Just a question about the video, the filmmaker. I want to search, I don't, is this something you would do, or is this, we would select some videographer to put this together, and if so, the latter, are we subject to any kind of public spending requirements, like we have to put this out for bid and go through the whole?
Yeah, well, if it's paid through the grant, I think there's actually some flexibility in there. To answer your second question, the first question, it would be a professional, we would provide guidance, but it would be professional from the outside. We know some people, because of the work we do, that do excellent work that we could recommend to the committee.
Right.
To do that,
Well, and I guess what I was thinking about, immediately I had like 3 folks in our community, I'm like, oh, they do this. But I was thinking, oh, shoot, do we have any sort of cronyism avoidance requirements or anything like that, or apparent cronyism? But
yeah, I mean, again, and this is only the vision, but I think the vision is to take this, there's an opportunity, there's gonna be a grant, there's gonna be money to fund something like this that's coming from, a different source. So to go pretty high level, and who that high level person is absolutely up for a decision. But
Okay.
so you know, so maybe buying local is good, maybe it's not.
But we don't have to advertise and go RFP and all that.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Look at it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I would defer to Audrey.
No, I think it's a good question, and we'll double check with Audra.
Yeah, I think it's worth-
all those accounting processes and.
Right.
And our hope is that, like, if this project moves forward the way we expect, that like we can provide like some of that support, because it's like a lot of details for the committee to be thinking about with monthly meeting in a year.
Right.
So, you know, hopefully we can kind of fill that in and like provide you things to review, provide you, you know, ideas. Hopefully it's get feedback from you or ideas. Hey, consider this person.
Yeah, good idea. Okay, so the next item, I think we're gonna tie it directly into subcommittees, because you can see the who, you know, ideally, these would be committee items where the committee takes a very active role, and a monthly newsletter, maybe it's monthly, maybe it's quarterly, you know, again, this is just a suggestion. Press releases and news articles from the committee. There was an idea that was thrown out, the morning after report. So sort of a quick, you know, summary of what happened in the meeting, you know, without having to go through minutes, you know, here's some of the things that happened. And then the thought is, jumping ahead on the agenda, is that these would be great to be sort of run and overseen by subcommittees. And, you know, our suggestion, and Courtney and Sophie and Maggie and I talked about our little agenda at our agenda setting meeting last week, is maybe a communication subcommittee and an education subcommittee from this group to start with. But again, that's just a suggestion. People might have other ideas. To really be able to start to dig into some of these things, because it'll be hard to do all of these as a committee.
And the idea is that those subcommittees would work, for instance, on the newsletter and come back to the group and share, you know, a draft or something. So we need to be agile. We cannot, you know, you trust the subcommittee with delivering the goods. You have a review process and then it's published. So because the cadence that is proposed is pretty frequent and pretty quick, so it needs to be, if that's the cadence you guys want to adopt. I mean,
Just one thing, is that communications and education, they're kind of doing the same thing. If we use the term education, I'm just wondering, because communications is educating as well. So I was thinking if we could change the title to the education committee to maybe technical or something to do with, because they're really focusing on what we want to be discussing in our Zoom meetings and presentations. Like the technical, the questions that haven't been answered yet, right? I don't know if there's better.
I think it's a good point. I think a technical education committee. So, you know, communication, I guess the view is it's the getting the word out piece. It's responding to questions. The technical education is who are our presenters going to be, you know, what do we need to make sure we cover at a public forum? That's
I'm not deciding, they're deciding.
Yeah.
So whatever,
It's still
whatever.
figuring that out, and maybe we need more than one communications committee, because there's website, there's the newsletter, there's other press release, staff newspaper, it's a lot. Maybe one committee could do it.
But we only will be meeting, having these full meetings once a month.
Once a month.
And the way this was written up in terms of how often and how quickly seemed a little ambitious to me.
it's very ambitious.
There isn't a lot to report. And I assume as we move forward with ideas about how to engage the public, there will be more. But so at this point, I'm not sure we need to split the committee. That we could do later on if it turned out that there was too much work. But I'm thinking of the communication committee. Isn't that what you were suggesting, for that maybe it would be too much?
Yeah, I was wondering how many committees we need, maybe more than 10 results.
So you may also not want committees. You can have teams.
Yeah,
You can pair up and you can say, so Susan and Courtney, they're gonna be the lead on newsletter, and I'm not putting you on the spot. But but you're the guys who are gonna be leading that project and drawing on other committee members, say, hey, this month I need your piece on X or whatever. And because sometimes committee can be a bit cumbersome, even subcommittees. So if it's, I like pairing people because it works nicely and you're not alone. Or having 3 members of a subcommittee, whatever the format you prefer. And it might be a different format for a different product. So the newsletter might require more people than a press release. A press release can even be just 2 people. So it's really a matter of how to organize yourself so that you're super efficient in the sense that you put together the team that's going to deliver quickly what you set up to do in delivering those products. So it might not be, it could be subcommittees, it could be pairs, it could be task force, whatever you feel is appropriate. And one size might not fit all.
So you start with the one that seems the best fit to begin with.
And then you tweak.
Yeah, but I actually like your idea of having a pair, in other words, to have 2 contact, they're the point people. And then they can tap other major committee people to contribute to the newsletter, to the, whatever the communication is, yeah.
So I'm just thinking we have 10 minutes left and this feels like an urgent item if we want to get a newsletter going.
I
What's
think
gonna
so.
be in the newsletter?
That's what my question is. At this point, I feel like I'm a little bit lost about what, if I were to say, okay, I'm happy to be on the newsletter. What am I putting in it?
I would think an
I have a million
introductory
ideas,
newsletter.
so.
Report out how we decided to form the committee.
So it's basically like the morning after report plus, extra when the next presentation is gonna be, just letting people know of like upcoming events. Bullet point. And then I think other like tips and whatever, sustainability or look at the picture of we're gonna go river, right? I'm sure
And we
there's
can be
lots
there to
of
support,
creative
if
things to do
you all decide, we can be there to support with like InDesign formatting, if you wanted to send, here are the pictures and the text that we want.
So, yeah, I mean, I actually did the newsletter for the school every week, so that's that part I'm completely capable of. Yeah, it was more the context of like after this meeting, I don't think I'd have a whole newsletter worth of information.
Yeah, no, I think the thinking is that, people are ready to be engaged and starting the process. So whether that's this month or next month, I think that's totally,
But I think a press release, first of all, because we've been working since September, and at least, a press release or something saying exactly what you told me, Susan. We exist.
Yes.
We're meeting regularly. What did you tell your in-laws at the Thanksgiving table when you talked about the River Committee, which was the highest rated topic of Thanksgiving in Canada, 2022. So again, your elevator pitch, the mission, the vision. We have actually things to say to start engaging with the public, and not everything needs to be a scoop, but it's setting the stage. It's saying we're meeting regularly. We're thinking about those issues. We're looking forward to your questions. This is going to be a regular meeting for us through the newsletters, through the presentations. I think you will find that there's plenty of things to say for it, and it doesn't need to be a 17-page newsletter. But
So this is going out to people who signed up at the tabling events, is that?
My question is where would
Yeah.
it be?
that would be our start. We had 8 pages of names, so.
And I think our best is to start off and say, thank you for signing
Yep,
up.
exactly.
We're still meeting. This is our mission. Here's where you can go. And we are looking at questions and moving forward with putting together committees or whatever, or educational.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with 1-page newsletters. I like this.
Yeah.
I think there's also, I think this group's very knowledgeable about the river and watershed. And I think there's a lot of people in the community that want to be engaged in it, but may not know as much as you.
Yeah.
And I think there's amazing information that exists out there that's not, real contested information, even just like the existing hydraulic troughs in the river, or how big the watershed is, or like, I found it very fascinating that McGonagall Lake is 8% of the whole watershed, like, by the square area. I mean, there's things that people can start to learn about. You know, and even conversations about, that we consider the watershed existing all the way to the end of Cameron Harbor.
Yes.
And I think that was enlightening to this
Yes,
committee.
yes.
So I think there's a lot of stuff that's, is probably even general knowledge or information.
Fair enough.
that-
Fun fact.
So.
Yeah,
that's-
I think-
Exactly, exactly.
I think this, the more we can educate the public.
Got two now.
The smarter they get, I think the better questions they'll ask.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think one of the, I mean, we don't have a lot of time left, but maybe having just, let's not the best be the enemy of the good enough to start with, like 2 or 3 volunteers who might want to think about the newsletter format and a timeline.
I'd be happy to.
I'll do.
So, and Seth, you want to
Just
do
your
it too?
ideas, yeah.
So, Seth,
I wasn't gonna throw myself into more right away. Necessarily, but I would love to help.
okay.
Well, I think we got 3 volunteers.
Yeah. Cool.
But he could probably tap fishing in the water.
Idea bank and all.
It's your band, exactly.
Yeah.
And the logo.
Yeah.
How about a press release? What do you guys think?
What do
You mean,
we need to write one now and send it out, or just in the
No, but
abstract?
we talked about it last time to start, or having what some people call the morning after report.
Mm.
That can be a very short statement saying the committee met, we looked at XYZ issue, our next meeting is on the X date. The presentation, there's gonna be a mid-month presentation, so that people know that we're meeting and that things are happening. But it's a quick half-page plan.
But could it be sort of an abstract of what's going to go into that first newsletter?
Also,
Could we talk to, the Camden Herald and have, or Ridley Pilot or whatever, and have a regular page or regular quarter page
Yep,
or something?
they would
that
love
is
to do that, I'm
ours
pretty sure.
to fill.
I think the first release should really be about the first
could.
presentation. Not that we exist, that we've been meeting.
To announce the first
But
presentation, the first press
the
release.
first presentation would be a thing, I mean, some people do know that we are meeting,
There's some,
and I don't know where we would gain with a press release, okay. We discussed a bunch of things, but I think with the first bit of a monthly program, this is something, something worth announcing.
up to you.
That's just my thought.
But I think we should think about what's our objective. What's the objective of this release? We want people to understand who we are, or
I think you were trying to point people in the direction of starting to look at water quality. So like a presentation on water quality, support from the government.
But couldn't that go out? In other words, the newsletter could go out before then, but in advance of the first Zoom meeting about water quality. So separate them a little bit.
well, one thing that a press release could do is gather more people for our newsletter to go out. I mean, we could say, if you're interested in getting a newsletter, this is our address.
You're attending a
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, I feel like we need to simplify as much as we possibly can. And it seems to me that a newsletter that goes into the newspaper kills every birds with all stuff. Like, there doesn't need to be a separate press release and a separate. The newsletter could do both
could
of
it
those
fit?
objectives, very simply, just.
Fit our entire newsletter in the newspaper, or
Make it.
Do one or the other.
like would we be allowed
Fit on
to?
a 3x5 card.
I know.
That's what I.
Maybe there's like one paragraph at the top of the newsletter that is the press release.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, no need to multiply.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like that you 3 are gonna kind of take that charge to start. What's our like goal for timeline?
good question.
If the first presentation is January 17th, we want to get something out mid-December, well. it's 26th right now.
Yeah, I'd say as soon as possible, we can get something out because it's been weeks since the election day. I think people are probably wondering about it. So I don't know, like. We need to meet, I guess, first, and
Okay,
figure out. but
I
guess
mean,
we
is it
should
too
do
long
that
to say by next Tuesday we'd have something, a newsletter put together? Is that too long, too short?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Respectfully.
Because we're not.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you.
We're gonna make it.
We have a meeting.
Yeah. So the 12th, I mean, the one.
Sorry, you put
And
it
Okay.
together and just saying.
Maggie, you've been for us have the master list at this point.
We digitized it. It's
Kind of ready to go.
have to be. Okay. Yeah, the first one doesn't have to be.
Yeah, and we're here to help you. So Matt, yeah, Maggie and I. are
So they
here to
can
help
send you the
We don't
text,
want
and you can send it out.
What?
They can send you. what-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can send we have the list digitized, we can send an email to all the people that signed up. I'm sure we're gonna get a billion bounce backs for handwriting we misinterpreted, but we'll deal. But yeah,
We really wanted to come from that email.
McGuntagook River.
Yeah.
Yes.
From any.
And do you guys have any examples of other groups that have done this, like other newsletters? Would you, have you?
Oh, sure, like,
That'd be cool.
we can think on that, examples of. Other
Yeah,
newsletters.
others who have experience with that.
And I can also remind people to sign
No,
up.
no, we just
I
wanted-
think.
How do you do that, though?
Rock.
Just picture of all the rocks.
Yeah, the rocks.
Right? You don't make motions?
Oh, yeah.
You do? That's
I
a
put
skill.
3D design.
Okay. So you wanna be the solo man of that subcommittee?
Sure.
That's important for a person.
Yeah.
Yes, Seth is making.
All right, then, Seth, you gonna help?
Yeah,
Awesome.
on it. Seth is on it. All right. All right, so we have a subcommittee for the newsletter. We have, I think we could kind of, I'll remind that the select board people can sign up to receive the forthcoming newsletter of the committee. You just remind me the email address, so I'm not bombarded with.
The email for the select board?
The email
The
to
Madame
sign
Clerk.
up. If people listen to the select board, which they never do,
Oh,
then they want to sign up, what email address do they
Yeah.
send a request? That's would be nice to have, so I'll put it in the, I'll remind that in my.
And then are we, what about oh, I guess the next presentation isn't until January. so we can
17,
Figure out the presentation subcommittee in the next meeting.
but
That'd be one.
Yeah, because we know what the first one is.
we don't know what the first one is, so we
Right.
already put it
We have
in the
time.
letter. Yeah,
yeah, and we'll finish going through this as well. We didn't hit on some big stuff, so
Right.
we'll talk with you about agenda setting.
Yeah.
Okay.
any last words?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays.
All right, I'm gonna close the Zoom now.
All right,
All right.
the meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.